Minnesota is facing a law enforcement crisis. Recruitment is at an all-time low, while pending retirements threaten the efficacy of agencies across our state. Looking back on the way our law enforcement officers have been treated over the past few years, it's no wonder why new recruits are hard to come by. Why would you want to serve in an environment where you're underappreciated, underpaid, and risk ruining your life every single day simply by doing your job? This environment has obviously been created by Democrats and their supporters who have spent the past few years demonizing law enforcement, calling them racist, calling for prosecutions after every officer-involved shooting, and remaining silent as officers and their families have been targeted by doxing and swatting and other forms of assault and harassment. In spite of all that, this week in the Minnesota House, Judiciary Co-Chair Tina Liebling made the ludicrous claim that Democrats and Republicans both fully support law enforcement. She made this claim in response to a bill presentation by freshman Republican House member Bedell Duran, who is himself a law enforcement officer. Duran was presenting a bill to protect the personal information of peace officers when he noted, correctly, that law enforcement is working in a hostile atmosphere, and he didn't even specifically blame Democrats for that. Liebling followed up with a defensive response claiming that Democrats support the police. Check out the exchange.
Right now, and what we need, just because of the atmosphere with law enforcement around this state right now, is we need to start looking at protecting our law enforcement a little bit more and showing from the legislature's stance right now that we do support our law enforcement, that we do need to look at showing them that we are caring about them, because right now the temperature around that particular subject is not really a good atmosphere.
I don't think that it's a partisan issue supporting whether we support police.
No.
And I hope you're not suggesting that, because obviously we've seen on both sides that there's been some pretty big disrespect to police, one of them being the president pardoning people who went after police and beat them and did all kinds of horrible things to police officers, and then they were pardoned by President Trump. So, I mean, nobody owns being respectful to police and respecting police, and I just want to put that out there.
Later that same day, we heard a bill on the House floor authored by former law enforcement officer and public safety co-chair Paul Novotny, which does something very simple and ostensibly uncontroversial. The bill allows law enforcement officers to keep their old badges as sentimental keepsakes rather than throw them away after the recent change in the state seal passed last year when we changed the state flag. And that made those badges unofficial. So we're talking about police badges that would otherwise end up in a landfill, badges that have tremendous sentimental value to the officers who wore them, some of which were passed down generation after generation within law enforcement families. Now, there's no conceivable reason why anybody should oppose law enforcement officers keeping these badges, especially when the alternative is tossing them into a landfill. And yet, when the vote on the House floor came, several House Democrats either voted no or chose to stay off the board and abstain from voting.
This bill gives permission for the state troopers, commercial vehicle inspectors, and Capitol Security to keep their badges that were obsoleted when they changed the state seal. And I had the opportunity early in my career to work with a trooper who had received his father's badge, and it had been passed down to him, and he took his dad's number and his badge when his dad retired. And this is going on still today. These badges last a career if they're taken care of, and many of them do. So this bill was brought to us as a way to give permission for the badges not to be destroyed so that they could be kept and become family heirlooms. The only value of the badges is for what it means to the troopers and someday their families when they pass. So The new badges have already been ordered. They're already out there. The new seal is already out there. These badges just need a good home to go to with permission from the legislature, and we can honor the service and the history of the Minnesota State Patrol and the commercial vehicle inspectors and the Capitol security officers, and I ask for a green vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll. There being 95 yeas, 12 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to.
Now, no one got up on the House floor and explained their opposition to this bill, but we can discern from the rhetoric and policy proposals made by Democrats in recent years that this opposition to allowing a small gesture of respect to law enforcement with obvious positive environmental impact can only be fueled by an irrational hatred of the profession. There's no other conceivable reason to vote no or abstain from voting on this bill. If there was a rational argument to provide, someone would have risen and offered it, but no one did. Notably, this bill was originally calendared the week before at the request of House Democrat leadership, but had to be postponed for reasons not provided. Then, a week later, this week, they still ended up with a split vote among their caucus for a simple and non-controversial gesture of respect to Minnesota's law enforcement officers. The implications are clear. Counter to Chair Liebling's claims, her caucus is deeply divided on their support for law enforcement in the state of Minnesota, and so petty about it that they aren't even willing to let officers keep their old badges, even when it means the alternative is more trash in a landfill. That's a profound expression of disdain. And that's what we're dealing with in St. Paul as House Republicans work to support our law enforcement and change the current toxic environment that keeps new recruits from signing up. If you care about protecting the productive and the virtuous from criminals and abusers, we need to elect Republicans across the board in 2026. Take care.